Hi, everybody. We're here to talk about Mandalorian Season 2. Just the whole of it. And I gotta say, immediately off the bat, I'm gonna be trying my hardest not to make this exclusively a discussion about the finale, because at the time of this recording, I just watched the finale not even 6 hours ago, like immediately before work. And boy, have I been stewing in those thoughts, and that's kind of, it's kind of inevitable. Like, this is just what's going to happen with most TV shows. Is the finale has kind of colored how I look at the season and the show as a whole. But I don't know. I suppose. Do you want to open with just a brief recap of how we felt about season one going into this season, or what? How do you want to do this?
Yeah, we'll do it that way because we didn't talk about season one. We didn't do a video on it. Or wait, we did, but
We did indeed.
yeah, we did. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So yeah, I guess we can just talk about the season overall, or get into our expectations and stuff. Well, I didn't really have any expectations so much because the only big thing, well, the two big things, story-wise, that I knew about the season going in was Bo-Katan being played by the incredible Katie Sackhoff, and Ahsoka being played by Zarya Dawson. Other than that, I didn't know like what the adventures would be like, or arc Mando would be on, or anything like that. So I was just excited that we were delving into like definitive Star Wars for me, which is Clone Wars era. And we do, but we also just do a bunch of really fun adventures throughout this season. And I think, like with no setup at all, and they can just hop in and more or less go the episodic route. This has been, and season one was already pretty darn good, but this is a step up. They definitely leveled it up this season.
Yeah. And okay, so for the most part, I feel about the same way with most of this season as I do about season one, which is that I really appreciate the aesthetic and just all of the production, and I can't wait to get another season of the gallery, the behind the scenes for this show, because I enjoyed the gallery for season one a lot, and there's just so much cool effects and so much great production around this season.
From my understanding, the gallery for this season is just like essentially like one big documentary. It's not split up into episodes.
I'll take it, but it's also good, and like the direction on pretty much every episode, I've got nothing but praise for. I feel like this season, it's really difficult for me to say which I enjoyed more between this and season one, because for the most part, I think of this whole show as a thing where, again, I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan. I'm not someone who really has an emotional stake in 90% of it. But with that being the case, this is just a really cool, nice, well-made bit of that franchise that I can appreciate. And with this, I think the things that are proving controversial about this season and that kind of endear people who are invested in Star Wars already are the kind of things that are maybe stopping me from liking it more than I do from a story perspective. By which I mean, my big, like, concrete takeaway from this season, just in terms of this show on its own 2 feet, is that I feel like it's at war with itself, and I feel like this is a show where the story of Din Djarin and Grogu, the Mando, and Baby Yoda is trying, rightfully, to be the heart of this show and the thing that we care about, and it's kind of at constant risk of being subsumed by a lot of Star Wars fan service. And as a fan service vehicle, I get that that's gratifying for a lot of people and it does that well, but I have a lot of reservations about. I feel like I'd be more invested in this show if we weren't spending time on things that I, as a non-hardcore Star Wars fan, really don't care that much about and don't need to see. But like, we'll get more into that as it's particularly in the latter half of the season, and particularly what's the big thing that's being talked about with the finale. So obviously, if you haven't watched the season already, then you probably, we're gonna get into big spoilers. I'd say if you enjoyed season 1, you're probably gonna like this. I know a lot of people who dug season 1 who do not care for season 2 at all, but I think odds are if you liked one, you're gonna like the other. So take that as recommendation or not.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting, the degree of different reactions that I'm not just seeing from the finale, but that I've been seeing in general. Because
as far as I know, like in my circles, pretty much everyone I know loves it, from fellow friends to fellow film pundits online, YouTube. Like, no one has a bad word to say about this show.
I've seen 3 distinct reactions, and the first one is the mainstream one, which it seems like 95% of people agree with, which is just that this is a really cool, fun show, very little to complain about. Yeah, it's comparatively shallow most of the time, but just as a show that people tune into week to week to just enjoy a chunk of Star Wars, it seems like most people really enjoy it on that level. There's number 2, which is the people who thought season 1 was kind of like without a story and without a real emotional engagement, and they felt like it was just action figures going around doing video game quests for a season. And by comparison, I've seen some people with that opinion say that season 2 was more substantial and had more of interest to say and actually felt like a story. And then there's the third opinion, which is probably the rarest, but I've seen it, which is people who were really into the first season and really don't care for a lot of the heavy Star Wars fan pandery stuff that's done in season 2. You still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Is that it?
Yeah, those are the 3 stances that I've seen, and I can't for the life of me decide where I fall, because I do think that there are moments where season 2 is like doing stuff that is way more interesting than what we were doing in season 1, and it's like, oh, I see why we had to have like a season to kind of world build this so that we can then do some more interesting stuff thematically in this season. And there's another part of me that goes, I wish I didn't feel like it was constantly being distracted from by Boba Fett and Luke Skywalker and all of this stuff.
Well, I don't feel like Luke Skywalker really distracts from anything. First of all, that's the last person I expected to show up. I thought we'd bring Ahsoka back and she's the Deus Machina that comes in and saves their asses at the end, but it's Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, I'm beyond torn about all of this.
I'm not so much torn. Like, you know this better than almost anyone who knows me. I don't like most of classic Star Wars. I don't like the original trilogy. I don't like the prequels. The most fun Star Wars movies for me to watch are the Disney ones. And I know that's blasphemy for hardcore fans, but that's just how I feel. Like, my genuine love and appreciation of the franchise comes from Star Wars, and bits of Rebels. Most of all the stuff that has Ahsoka in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I almost like felt vicariously excited about Luke showing up through fans who are, attached to the classic trilogy and Luke, and I guess the Skywalker saga minus the sequel trilogy. But I don't think it's like the goal of the season is for Mando to find Baby Yoda a master who can train him, and he does that. So we have a full story here, and like we have a bunch of mini adventures in between that. And those, pretty much all of those, are really fun and engaging and well done. And we get to rehumanize Mando a lot more here. It was cool in season 1 for like to watch them pull off us like really liking this character, even though we can't see him emote, and they have to infer, like they have us inferring so much through just his voice inflection and posture and body language and all of that. But then it was really cool to see them peel the curtain back and show his face and just see how vulnerable and human he is.
Yeah. And well, just to okay, this I can tackle this from multiple points, because I really do love the way that Pedro Pascal's vocal performance and like his out of the helmet performance, he really does carry so much of this show, and that's part of why I feel kind of the way I do, in the sense that, again, we are talking, this is the day of the finale having dropped, and I just feel like the discourse around this show has kind of reflects my reservations about the whole franchise. And I actually decided not even a moment ago that I was going to make a scripted video about what I feel is the fascinating kind of contradiction about my feelings about this show, which is that if I can separate the narrative of the show itself from the meta-narrative of Star Wars the franchise, then I don't have all that much to complain about. Like, yeah, the fact that Luke is literally a Deus Ex Machina, like, how did he even get here? I guess we just have to assume it's the Force.
Well, yeah, because Grogu called out to Jedi, and he happens to be the one to...
Oh, right, that's true, yeah.
Yeah, that's not like a plot hole, like, Grogu...
Yeah.
He's there because of Grogu.
Yeah. But it's like this... For the most part, if I just take this show on its own terms, as far as, okay, Boba Fett is a guy who just came in and, like, he's here to help, and so we give him basically an episode-length action scene to show everyone that he's cool and that he can help. Cool. And Luke Skywalker shows up. He is a Jedi, aside from Ahsoka. He's probably one of, like, 2-3 Jedis max in existence right now. Of course, this is the guy who would show up to come pick up Grogu. And, like, the scene where, again, he takes off the helmet and it's really genuinely emotional. And, like, I've heard people complain about the choice to do, like, CG de-aged Luke. I wasn't even remotely paying attention to that because I was so enraptured by Pedro Pascal's performance. He and the puppet were the only things I was paying attention to. But yeah, so on those...
I said I definitely didn't have that.
But like on its own terms, on those terms of just this show as basically a self-contained piece, I think it's fine. There's very little to complain about. But it's when I think about it in terms of, I don't think I like what this says about the priorities of this franchise and where it's going, that we end this season of what was supposed to be this guy's show by bringing in an older character and just having them solve everything, and it's this big moment of like not just fan service, but like, oh hey, look, Luke's back, and he's being cool and badass with the lightsaber. Personally, and like you, I have a very unique perspective as a quote unquote Star Wars fan, which is that really I'm a Last Jedi fan, and everything else is kind of secondary to that for me. And as someone who really loves the way that Luke is characterized in The Last Jedi and what that movie has to say about him and the Jedi in general, no part of me needed a Luke Skywalker equivalent to the Rogue One hallway scene. And like no part of me needed to see an episode-length action sequence with Boba Fett just fighting a bunch of stormtroopers. Like that, I feel like I bristle against that really hard, and stuff like that takes me out of this show because it feels like it's there to please a very specific kind of Star Wars fan that I don't think needs to be indulged that way. And I don't think that's made for most people who aren't like hardcore Star Wars fans watching it. I think it's there for like a very specific kind of person, and it takes me out. And that happens too many times. And I feel like this show it feels sometimes like Pedro Pascal or just the man Din as a character has to fight to be the lead of this show. And like it's not often, but when it happens, it feels wrong. And I worry about the state of Star Wars if that kind of thing is going to be what all of these shows are. And I feel bad that I have that worry because I feel like we should be taking these things on their own terms first and as part of a franchise second. And it's just I'm full of a lot of swarming emotions about what this show makes me feel about Star Wars, and do I even want to be like super invested in what's coming after this.
Okay, so I sympathize with some of your sentiments to a degree. I think that you are, first of all, I think what's smart is they're not just indulging fans of the original trilogy, they're also indulging fans like me who really love Clone Wars and Rebels and that era of Star Wars. That is my Star Wars. And
yeah, for the most part, it spreads out its fan service pretty evenly across the other parts of it.
I don't necessarily know the ins and outs of all Star Wars stuff. I think it all works and it doesn't feel too intrusive. The only I have no problem with Luke coming in. That doesn't bother me. Like I don't like my excitement about it was kind of me vicariously like knowing that hardcore fans around the world were going nuts at seeing that. I'm not a big Luke fan, but I don't have an issue with him being there. I just wished that because when Mando fights the first one who managed to get past the doors, that was such an intense and thrilling scene. I'm like, how's he gonna get out of this? That's a classic thing that you do for adventures is they have a plan, they try to execute it, something goes wrong, how do they adapt? And Mando, of course, he's able to pull through and get rid of that trooper, but then when they all show back up on the ship, you're like, they are screwed, how do they get out of this? And then we just Deus Machina them out of it. That's a little stupid. That's the extent of my issue with that. But I don't have a problem on principle with putting Luke in this show, or even doing it the way they did it, because let's face it, it's easy to complain about CGI, but it's Disney. Their pockets are pretty limitless. They had a substantial amount of time to make the show. That looks as good as it's gonna look. You're not gonna get much better than that.
Yeah, and honestly,
and fans would have cried foul, I think, if you try to recast a look-alike.
Yeah, not everyone wants him to be played by Sebastian Stan, guys.
Yeah, especially when the actor's still alive. So let's not do that.
Yeah. And like, just I do want to say I don't disagree because you mentioned on principle. I think those are the two levels that I look at it, because on principle, I don't have a problem with bringing Luke Skywalker into this show either. Like, again, we established back at the end of season 1 that, like, our stated goal is take the baby and deliver him to the Jedi so that he can be among his own quote-unquote kind. There's only so many Jedi still alive at this point in the franchise timeline. It was a fairly decent likelihood that Luke was going to show up even if we never considered that. And, like, I was having a discussion with Nash, the host of Radio Dead Air, which is a great channel that you guys should follow. He mentioned, and he kind of he salvaged the narrative part of the show for me, and less the meta-narrative side, which is, again, as much as I might complain about feeling kind of alienated by how the Luke and the Boba Fett stuff is presented, I think it's the presentation. I don't think there's anything wrong with bringing those characters in on paper or even having them be significant, because, and this might be the thing that maybe makes this season feel more like a story to people, is that I like what this season does in that it's about Mandalorian culture, and it's about facing Din with all of these different figures who are a part of his culture and being like, these are different parts of that cultural identity and they handle things very differently to you. And how do you process that? So, like, we start that with the first episode of the season where he just finds Cobb Van, is that his name? Cobb something? The marshal who has his armor.
You can just call him the marshal.
Yeah, okay. And he's like, what are you doing? You can't wear that. And he eventually comes to realize, like, this guy's not a bad guy. I should really just, he had this on for a reason. He was protecting these people. Okay, fine. Then Bo-Katan shows up, and it's like, these are legitimate Mandalorians, in a way perhaps more legitimate than him, and they just don't subscribe to the same creed that he does. And how does he handle that? And even the inclusion of Ahsoka and Luke ties into that notion of the Jedi and the Mandalorians have always been kind of like cultural enemies, and yet here are these people who are his allies. And so that and Boba Fett and all this stuff creates a really interesting through line of this season, of where it's not arbitrary and it's not just fan service. From a story perspective, all of these decisions make perfect sense as a means of, this is what being a Mandalorian means and is reflected back at this character, and how can he grow from that? So all of that I like. It's just the way that it's framed in episode 6 and 8 in particular that really throws me off and makes me think that I question the priorities of Lucasfilm.
Well, they announced at their Disney investor thing all those different shows, so it's clear that they saw the potential and wanted to spend stuff out of Mando, and why should they not be allowed that? Especially because they're scaling back on the films. We've only got Patty Jenkins' new film coming out in 2021, 2022.
Yeah, my issue isn't remotely that things shouldn't be spun out of Mando. My issue is just, I don't know, taking time out of this show that for a while there it was fan service, yes, but it also seemed like this cool, fun, uncharted territory for a Star Wars thing, and we devoted so much time to bring back old Star Wars characters and let them, like, steal the spotlight and placate all of the fans who are like, oh, but I wanted to see Luke come in and cut people's heads off and slice up a bunch of stuff, and why didn't he get to have a cool lightsaber fight?
I don't think there were any fans asking for that.
I feel like a lot of people were asking for that.
They were asking, okay, so most people, at least in my view, from where I'm sitting, most people are really obnoxious with the whole CG face thing and never want you to do it. The only major film release that I think that most people are aware of that got away with it was The Irishman. But almost every other time, people are against ever doing young face CGI because it always looks bad or whatever. So you're really asking me, well, you're really telling me what you want is for Mark Hamill, who is over 30 years past the age he is supposed to be in that continuity, to come in and fling a lightsaber around in a show that is about, okay, well, it's Star Wars, so Jedis aren't precluded from being there. There would just be less of them, and Luke is alive in this time period anyway. So I guess the main point I'm trying to make is, I just think it's kind of obnoxious to just look at a show that's telling a story about a specific set of characters and then throw these requirements at it like it needs to be fan service to the show. That's not really what Mando is.
Yeah, no, I think I get what you're saying. I don't mean that I think people wanted Luke to be doing that in this show specifically, but like, coming out of the sequel trilogy, you know that there were people who were like, oh man, it sucks that we never got to see Luke have his whole badass lightsaber sequence, when, I don't know, I'd been long won over by the idea that that's maybe not something that we should see or that needs to be put on screen ever, and that this show took it upon itself to do that is kind of loaded for me in terms of, oh well, so I guess that notion that maybe Luke could be a different thing and that he wasn't that kind of character, like, oh no, well, I guess that's just fine, whatever.
I mean, like, him choosing to not kill his father is a far different thing than fighting and taking down a bunch of droids.
Yeah, which is why I say on paper it's fine. The thing is, it's presentation. It's like they chose to make that scene, they chose to portray it as like this super triumphant moment of like, oh snap, everybody, Luke Skywalker's here, fan service.
How else do you portray that? Just mainly this Jedi that none of them know comes in and just mops the floor with all these really deadly drones, and we just portray it as like a mundane, just it's another day in Star Wars. Like,
I would do one of two things.
About that.
I would do one of two things. I would either not write that scenario and either have there be less robots or no robots and they take care of the situation by themselves and then Luke shows up, or have it be kind of not scary but like threatening, and like maybe this is a darker side to the Jedi that we shouldn't be, like, we shouldn't want to see Jedi like be destructive in this way. And it's not a matter of it's fine because they're robots. It's a matter of how you choose to frame it. And like, again, looking at The Last Jedi or or Rogue One, where we have two opposite sides of the coin, which is Darth Vader comes into this hallway and he just massacres people, and I, for one, took that scene as being, oh god, look at how terrifying and monstrous this guy is. But so many fans were like, oh god, no, this is cool. Darth Vader's an awesome, like, cool badass. And on the other end of that spectrum, you have Luke shows up, does a fake lightsaber duel, kills nobody, damages nothing, and yet it's this incredibly impressive, triumphant feat. And taking Luke and basically doing the Darth Vader scene, except the only difference is they're not people. I don't know, I just think the framing of that is weird.
I see nothing weird about that at all.
Fair. I think I had a transition and then I forgot about it. Oh, right, my last point about Boba Fett, which is, I think he's kind of the weak link in terms of the Mandalorian culture aspect of it, because he's in 3 episodes of this show and is a significant part, like he's the focus of at least one of those episodes, and I still don't feel like I could describe to you Boba Fett's character, and I feel like that's a real oversight in this show where we tend to bring in a guest star and they are characterized pretty decently in just one episode. I still don't know who Boba Fett is or why I should care. And so when the end credit scene of this show is Boba Fett comes in and he usurps this place, and it's like the Book of Boba Fett coming December 21st, December 2021. It's like, I'm sure that could be a good show. I'm sure odds are it will be a good show. But I have zero eagerness or incentive to see that, because who is this person and why should I care other than they're a cool fighter?
I'd argue you could say the exact same thing about Ahsoka if you never saw an episode of Clone Wars.
I think that's true. Yeah, probably, but also, even then, Ahsoka's in one episode, and we don't end this show with Ahsoka's gonna have her spinoff. Like, obviously, we know that she is, but I don't know. It was weird.
I mean, we don't end the episode with it, but when I heard her say, "Where's Admiral Thrawn?" I'm like, "Yep, spinoff." Before we even knew officially about it, I'm like, when she asked her that, I'm like, "Yeah, they're definitely giving her her own show."
Yeah.
Admiral Thrawn is a pretty major character in the Star Wars books, of which I've only read 2. That was like years ago. But yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think it's just really interesting to see the very diametrically opposed reactions to this show, both from myself and from other people, to where I'm at this place of like, I kind of like this show more, or I like this show more when it's relatively standalone. Just let the Mandalorian go on an adventure and like world build through that, and not tying into pre-established stuff. And yet that absolutely does appeal to certain people. And this show is trying to walk a really fine balance, and it's still getting a lot of extreme reactions. And I wonder if the issue is just fans. I wonder if this franchise is at a place where no matter how much a piece of media tries to kind of walk the line between being fan servicey and being its own thing, it's always going to get those kind of extreme reactions.
Well, from where I'm sitting, it's so as vast as Star Wars is still Star Wars in a very unique universe, and I'm definitely not saying you have to do as much fan service as they are doing. What I'm also saying is it also can't be the opposite extreme. For this to be like, quote unquote, its own thing, never tie into Star Wars, or never tie into any of the stuff that we actually know. Because then it just doesn't even feel like Star Wars.
I don't necessarily agree with that. Well, I mean...
I said it, so yeah, but...
Because so much of Star Wars is aesthetic, and like, the Boba Fett / Mandalorian armor is so iconic and so, what is it? It's so associated heavily with the franchise already, to where it's like, you could put a guy dressed like that in basically any situation, and so long as it wasn't like a complete genre shift, it would feel like Star Wars. It's still adventure, it's still laser blasts. I really feel like it's a pretty wide... I feel like it's a really, really wide net of what can be considered under the Star Wars umbrella, like tonally, aesthetically. So I don't think like making an episode or a story that's just all new stuff would... I don't think that would happen.
I'm saying is we've already done that. Like, season 1 has plenty of episodes that don't tie into the larger Star Wars world, but I think it's a mistake to do none of it.
Yeah, and like the stuff where I think it all works is the ongoing conflict in terms of the Empire is still in some capacity out there, and like the New Republic is maybe not as squeaky clean as we'd like to believe. Because like we've discussed this already, my favorite episode is episode 7, and like that's built on what's the pre-established status quo, and like there's Mayfeld's backstory that we get into in my favorite scene in that episode. That's a direct reference, I found out, to Battlefront 2. So like there is stuff that is a self-contained narrative that is still clearly built for and by the world of Star Wars as it already exists. That stuff I think all works.
To defend the Boba Fett thing in particular, first of all, Boba Fett, still, I mean, he's closer to being a character than he ever has been, but he wasn't even a character in the original trilogy at all.
Yeah, which is why I'm one of the weirdos who just did not think he needed to be brought into this show, period. But I was like, okay, maybe they can give him a character and win me over on him, but then they didn't.
Yeah, like, especially because look at Darth Maul. Wasn't a character in the prequels either. But became one of the most interesting Star Wars villains in Clone Wars and in Rebels.
Yeah. Like, even I know that. Like, once Filoni got his hands on Maul, he just did nothing but make it more interesting.
Exactly.
And it's like,
there's no reason you can't do the same thing with Boba Fett.
Which is one reason I'm willing to give his own show a chance, because like now he's going to be the protagonist of a show. They'll have no choice. But then my response to that would be, why not just wait until that show comes out to do anything with him at all? If you're just gonna bring him in for an extended guest spot in this show, that should be time spent on creating a base for like a character that people who aren't massive Star Wars nerds can care about.
Well, we already have our main cast that we do care about.
Yeah.
We got Mando, and Baby Yoda's not really a character as much as he is a prop. It's just Baby. But we have Mando. We have the girl whose planet got destroyed, who I still can't remember her name.
Kara?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
got Kara, we've got Greef Karga. We're slowly developing like a consistent cast in this show full of really interesting characters.
Yeah, this isn't exactly. I mean, it's becoming more of that this season, obviously. But I definitely wouldn't call season 1 an ensemble cast show. It's mostly just the Mando and Baby Yoda show with some guest spots.
I would say that's still the case with season 2, except that those guest spots stay on a little bit longer sometimes. It's weird. It's like in this gray area where I'd still say it's not an ensemble show at all. It's still very much a single protagonist goes on a journey show.
Yeah.
But you do have a cast who is popping up more frequently and they've gone from guest stars to supporting characters.
I'm trying to figure out what other topics to hit.
Well, I would say just any standout moments, how you felt about specific episodes.
Okay, so I was pretty enthralled by kind of every episode. One thing I will say that we gotta stop doing is we gotta stop giving Mando an easy Ex Machina. We gotta stop giving him the easy way out when he finds himself in a tough situation. One of the big ones for me is the episode where he crashes on the ice planet and is fighting all those alien spiders who are just terrifying. Like, how the heck is he gonna get out of this? Oh, those patrol guys show up and take care of the giant spider for him.
Yeah.
Like, we gotta stop writing him into situations that he just gets an easy out of it. And like from the outside looking in, this is his show. I think it's fairly safe to say that he's not gonna die. We know he's not gonna die, but we want to feel that tension, and we want it to be resolved. We want his conflicts to be resolved in a way that is compelling. It needs to be him doing it, and not just the universe gives him a bone every time he finds himself in a jam. And like there are great moments where he is really resourceful, and like again, like in the finale when he's fighting one of the troopers, and how he eventually takes it down. And you know, there's stuff like that all over the show, but there also are a few of those bits where he gets an easy out because he's the main character. And I don't think we should. And like the Luke thing is like that. That's my bigger issue with the Luke thing. It's just, it's
too convenient.
Yeah, just stop doing that. That's my biggest criticism of the whole show. And another thing that I freaking love how this season ends. Like, because it could have easily been nobody shows up, we have to keep looking.
It could have been. It's an actual significant status quo change that makes you wonder, how are we going to
have no idea how they're going to keep going.
Yeah. It's like, because I'm seeing people who are outright saying it like it's a bad thing, of like, I don't know how you do a third season after this. I'm like, that's actually kind of an exciting prospect, because it means that they're going to have to
put yourself in a situation where you got to think outside the box.
Yeah. But it's and we leave it in a really interesting place, because we haven't remotely resolved the fact that the Mando has the Darksaber now, and he's going to have to presumably fight Bo-Katan over it. Like, how is that going to shake out?
I could see him, because he tried to pawn it off to her as like a matter-of-fact thing. I could see him just as easily being like, just hit me or whatever. And then like he'll be like, oh no, like I'll sit down or whatever. Or, here you go, here's the sword. Like I pictured him trying to do something like that. Just, do we really have to fight to the death? Just take the sword.
Yeah, I don't know, just the degree to which she refused makes me think that we're going to open next season, and that's going to be like an issue that still needs resolving.
Yeah, and I'm interested to see how they go about that.
Because I'll say, like, on the note of the fact that he needs sort of to be bailed out so many times, something I really like that was already present in season 1, but I think is emphasized a lot in season 2, is the fact that, for as cool as he is, Mando needs help often, and he's a character who is fallible and makes mistakes, and sometimes he really does just have bad luck, like the universe is just against him. And that's a really neat shortcut to, like, I think that helps with the fact that we can't see his face for so much of it. Like, the fact that he feels like just a guy. Like, he's a really cool, really competent guy, but, like, just stuff can just happen to him. And he's not prepared for literally everything. And he's not totally unflappable.
And that makes him all the more compelling.
Mm-hmm. And, hang on. I had a couple of other notes. I suppose a better opportunity to talk about this would have been when I was talking about the Empire. But parts of what I do really like about this show, and parts of what get me excited to see more in this vein, is that I don't care so much for the fan service stuff, but when it's characters, when it's using the unique sort of perspective of this show to have discussions that we never get to have in the movies, and which have frankly been needed to have for a long time. Of like, it's astounding how I came out of the finale feeling so sort of torn on it, because in those opening minutes, I was like, oh wow, this is great. where we open that episode with they come in to pick up the scientist, and the guy is like, "Hey, do you remember the millions of people who were killed on the Death Star?" And she was like, "Which one? Oh, hi, you think you're funny? No, like a bunch of people died. Exterminating your planet was worth it to get rid of a bunch of terrorists." It's like the galaxy cheered when my people got killed, but fine, whatever. Like, that's fascinating. And like, that's actually a way that I think portraying Luke as maybe a little bit dangerous in his scene could have been like beneficial to the story, because we so often in this season make a point of like, yeah, the Empire is evil. Like, they're terrible. They're composed of a lot of straight up evil bad guys. But they're also comprised of some people who unfortunately are like ideologically wrong, but they're still just people doing a job. And we should maybe talk about the fact that we blew up several 100 million of them. And we should talk about the fact that there are some people like Mayfeld who work for the Empire and are just disillusioned and realize that, like, this system does not care about them. And he has a good point when he's like, the New Republic, the Empire, it's all the same to some of these people. And I don't know. I kind of just want to go deep into Episode 7 and how much I love all the discussion that's done about the importance of choosing a side, but also recognizing that things are complicated and that, like, there is a value in the life of people like stormtroopers. And we never discussed that, and we should have discussed that in the sequels, but it didn't happen. And I really like it when this show does things like that. It's like, oh, sorry, what were you saying?
Now, see, I don't agree with the initial point you made before you went into all of that of we need to vilify Luke. Like, simply because he's not taking out troopers. He's taking out droids. It's just not the same thing.
I know, I'm not saying that we have to vilify him. I'm saying that the way that we frame it, like visually, like the direction of the scene, I think could benefit from making it look less like a moment of triumph and more like a moment of this is maybe a threatening thing.
But he just saved all of their lives, and he is there to help them and train Grogu. Like, there's no reason for them to be scared of the guy. Despite what he can do, he is on their side, so that you can't frame it like that.
I think you can, up to the moment that he removes his hood.
And we more or less, I'm not going to say that we do necessarily, but Mando already implicitly trusts the guy before he even meets him, because Grogu puts his hand on the screen. So, everyone else is kind of scared of whatever Jedi that is, which is why they have their guns drawn until he takes off the hood. So I think everyone in that room is still scared of him, except obviously for Mando and Grogu. So I think that scene works fine.
Yeah. I don't really have an argument for that. Oh, wait, we haven't talked about Moff Gideon at all.
I was going to get to him after we talked about Episode 7.
Yeah.
I really liked, and it's an interesting thing to do, because when you decide that you're going to start humanizing clones, you have to firmly look at your story, because every story has this, right? Every story, well, a lot of major stories in this kind of genre thing have cannon fodder characters that you have your heroes just take out, and the audience doesn't really think about it, they're just along for the ride. The staple of that for Star Wars just obviously has, happens to be the clones, the stormtroopers.
Yeah.
When you start humanizing them, you you run the risk of kind of, for lack of a better analogy, Last of Us Part 2, you kind of end up delving into that kind of thing. Where like, everything is typically, for these kind of stories, things are fairly clear cut, and, you know, there's nuance, obviously, but, like, you have a clear side that you're supposed to be rooting for and a clear side that you're not. And when you throw, not even a monkey wrench, but a straight up bomb into that and mess with it, you end up with a very divisive reaction, as we saw with The Last of Us Part 2. So if they double down on that hard, I could see that becoming an issue. Having said that, that is one of the most compelling things about that episode. Like him just being like, yeah, everyone's, at the end of the day, we're all just people, and not everyone in the Empire actually agrees with the rhetoric, and it's like an actual space Nazi. They're a victim of happenstance, and this is just a job, and they're just trying to survive.
Yeah, and like pretty much all of his dialogue throughout that episode, to where like the whole extended conversation where they're just sat in the thing, and he's just interrogating him on what actually is his philosophy and how everyone draws lines in the sand, but they're willing to like sort of bend them or even break them as soon as things get messy. And he's like, what's the rule? Is it that you can't show your face, or that you have to keep the helmet on? Because those are not the same thing. And I feel like a lot of other properties would just glance over that and treat it like those two things are the same thing. And I was wondering about that before that conversation started, and it was really interesting and engaging to me to have someone just be like, no, let's discuss the contradiction here. I'm not going to just let you blow past this. Are you willing to hold to your beliefs, or are you willing to drop them when it becomes convenient? And just to have someone have that conversation in a Star Wars thing is a thing that I really enjoy.
Yeah, that's what makes that, honestly, definitely, if not the whole show, the strongest episode of the season. Heck, I can't stand. Like, I love the finale, and it's a lot of fun, but like that's a really strong episode. And what I was left with, especially coming out of the finale, can he still go back to the Mandalorians that he associates with, and will they still accept him after he's broken the creed?
Yeah, because he's broken it several times by the end of the season.
Like, he's practically thrown it away. I don't know if he...
Yeah.
I would assume he's going to want to go back to them at some point. Or he might have to. Will they accept him?
Yeah, and here's what I'm wondering, because it could go either way, are we going to get more consistently Pedro Pascal in whatever comes next? Because I get the sense that he takes that helmet off to say goodbye to Grogu in a room full of people. And like, yes, he trusts these people, but also...
It's that important to him that he sees his face in that one.
Yeah, and just like, I don't know if... Like, at this point, he's broken it so often, I don't know if we're going to get to Season 3 and he's still super staunch about keeping it on. Like, he might just have it off just sometimes, like, once
Maybe
per
that
episode.
might be an aspect of his character that fundamentally changes through his
and
show.
that would make what we get in this season like a fully formed character arc for him, of where he starts this season like firmly still believing in that creed. He only broke it, and only kind of in like a loophole sort of way, once in Season 1, and we keep
the robot wasn't a big thing, yeah.
Yeah. Like, I really do appreciate that. Like, for as much as we've already spent a lot of time, like most of this, with me griping about things, I do want to lay out that I really do appreciate that there is a story to this season, and it's about basically putting this guy up against a bunch of mirrors to himself and having them all in like different ways say, okay, you're gonna keep that helmet on or not, and why is it so important to you that you do?
Yeah, because we know it's a part of the creed. We still don't really know. That's kind of mysterious. We still don't really know exactly why.
Well, I don't know. I don't
Or
necessarily
do
need
we?
that explained. It's just like this is a cultural, religious belief that this subsect of the Mandalorians have. This is the sect that happened to find him and raise him. So it's basically just a religious belief that he has, or practice.
And I don't expect Mando to ever get to a place where like, he's with someone and they have like a white picket fence and like full on family or whatever. But I'd be interested to see him go back to that village and maybe rekindle something with that woman, since the main thing keeping them apart was the fact that he couldn't lift his helmet up.
Yeah. And you know what, like, now that he's done what he needs to do for Grogu, it's going to be interesting. Does he just go back to bounty hunting? Is like the next time we see him, is he going to be trying to carve out a life for himself? Like, what's going to happen from this point?
Yeah, and what is his goal after he got Grogu to where he was supposed to take him?
Yeah, you see, this is why Star Wars is gonna have all of us in a vice grip forever. Because even as I complain about like concerns that I have going forward, it's like I'm just too interested to see what happens next.
And like this is how, and you may feel that it's intrusive, but I think this is how you do it. You introduce a character in a show that's already off the ground and has its fans, and you make them a standout, and then you give them their own show and see how they handle it. Like the big thing for that, well, the big thing with that, but my first time really was the first time that's really done with like, you know, with something that the circles that we run in is Flash. You got Arrow coming out. Arrow's on its second season, and that was like I remember distinctly the only show that I was watching at the time where it's like random people that I weren't friends with in school, like popular people that probably wouldn't associate with me unless they were asking me for the answers to a test or homework or whatever. Having conversations with me about Arrow, and they know about well, they're really invested in that show. They find out about Flash and they watch Flash. Like that was a big thing for me growing up in school. That little that period of time where we had like this really popular superhero show, and then they spun out Flash, and it was great.
Yeah.
Obviously, that show has its issues. Well, season one was pretty solid, minus a lot of the melodrama was very pining for someone who was not only in a relationship, but for all intents and purposes, his adopted sister. Even though they're
Not to
related,
make this a podcast about that show.
yeah. But yeah, I just say it to say like, I think ideally that's how you want to do it.
Yeah. And then, like, by that same token, when Flash did spin off and in turn got spin offs of itself, they all feel of a piece, but also like their own thing, which is what you want.
Something else I gotta make sure we hit on: freaking score. My God,
Yes.
this guy is on the level of Hans Zimmer. Like, he's killing the game. He's
Love it.
just as good as any composer in the business right now. I mean, Black Panther to this, like it's insane how good this guy is. The dubstep theme for the Troopers was so cool.
Yes, that I was gonna mention that. Like, that's such a thing I've not heard in Star Wars before, and I was like, ooh, this is new and different.
Yeah. I was so
Okay,
impressed
yeah.
by that.
Yeah.
That and the cool. It was kind of a remix of the original theme that he came up with. Um, Followed by it, this like, well, an original piece came before it, but like the opening of season one and like Mando walking, like, still cool.
Yeah. But
I think
yeah,
that's.
so we were gonna
I
say
think
we were
that.
gonna talk about Moff Gideon.
Yeah, Moff Gideon. Um, I really. So me and you both talked up in the video we did for the Boys season two about how his character there was kind of, at least I felt this way. I felt like he was kind of underutilized and ultimately not super important to the story of that season, which is odd.
Yeah.
But here, like that was it was cool to see him in this, and I don't think he's even in this season as much as he is in the first season. Do you agree with me on that? Like, I don't think he necessarily had more screen time here, but he had a part to play that was interesting. And
Yeah. Like we give
like
him
played it.
we give him moments to actually like play a character beyond just the bad guy. And like, don't get me wrong, Giancarlo Esposito is really, really good at playing the bad guy. But I've seen him show up in so many villain roles where he's just kind of that straightforward, stern, controlling guy. And I'm glad when he gets scenes of like him just messing around with the baby, like just being this really vindictive. Like it's really interesting. And one of my favorite bits when Luke shows up, that like pants wetting terror on his face. Like we actually, you're right. I don't know if it's necessarily true that he has more straight up minutes of screen time than he did last season. I'm sure he does if we like mathed it out. But what matters is that they give him some stuff to do where he actually gets to like play a character and it feels fun.
Yeah, and there's. I don't want to be completely disparaging to the role he played in The Boys, because he's certainly interesting there as well. I just feel like he should have been more important to the overall story than he actually was, because with Madeline in the first season of that show, not to get too sidetracked, she was very integral to how that season plays out. That like season one certainly doesn't happen the same way if you just take her out. Like Homelander's identity is so tied to her, and like him killing her is so important. But yeah, with him stepping in to replace her, I thought, wow, we're really gonna see how he would run the group, and he really kind of doesn't. He's the figurehead of that overall company, but he barely even associates himself with the Seven proper.
Which that by itself is an interesting thing for his character. But if you were looking forward to seeing him be like a major figure, then that's a little bit of a disappointment. But yeah, bring it back to this show. I like what we've done with him here, and again, that's another interesting bit of the status quo. Is like, what's going to happen with him now? We don't know.
Yeah, because we didn't kill him, and I was so expecting us to kill him. Especially because while Bo-Katan says she doesn't care if he's dead or not, I get the distinct impression, maybe it's just the feeling I get from the look in her eyes during the performance. She doesn't really mean that, and she's more than willing to kill him.
Yeah. But I don't know. I'm looking through my notes, and I think we covered just about everything of interest, to me anyway.
I will say this is definitely the Star Wars show I never knew I needed.
Yeah, I will say I'll end out by saying I'm really thankful we had this conversation because, again, this is maybe a thing of we're coming directly off of the finale, but I'm grateful to like be able to just hash out my thoughts out loud and end this feeling like still, yeah, I do want more of this, like regardless of how I feel kind of put off by certain decisions. In the end, I do really want more of what this show is, and when we get more, I feel like it's going to be in a really interesting place. So I can't help but appreciate it for that, if nothing else. So like, yeah, I think for the most part, things are going to be pretty fine, and like we're going to continue to enjoy stuff that comes out of this property.
I was reminded, like the conversation that we had about Luke. I was reminded of you fixing the Stormfront issue for me when Queen Maeve just shows up and she's fighting a Stormfront, and I was like, how the heck did she just show up here? Does this even make sense for her character? He's like, oh, she found out she was a Nazi and wanted to beat the crap out of her because she's a Nazi.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I was able to fix the Luke scene for you, because honestly, that's not the big fan service moment. I was excited for fans who love Luke. I am not that person. So I was happy for them when I saw him. But I'm like, there's nothing wrong with this. This is cool, and I'm just kind of shocked that you would even do it. Like, I wasn't expecting us to go there and bring Luke in, but we were bold enough to do so.
Yeah. I'll say nothing else. That was a genuine surprise. Yeah. And like, if nothing else, if a show like this can surprise me, that's worth a lot.
All right, I'm gonna end this stream, and we can hop over into. I'll start another stream back up, and then we can hop over into that to do the commentary on X-Men, Origins of Wolverine.
So I'm gonna exit this one and see you in a minute.